Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribe and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. Before this story starts, I want to say one thing about family dinners. People think public spaces make bad behavior less likely, but sometimes they do the opposite. Some people count on the noise, the plates, the side conversations, and your reluctance to embarrass everybody. If you keep noticing the same small discomfort around the same two people, do not keep explaining away just because there are relatives in the room. Familiar rooms do not make strangers out of betrayal. Sometimes the safest decision is the one that feels rude in the moment. Paying attention the first time your body tells you something is off. My name is Malik Turner, and the night everything split open, it was raining the kind of cold April rain St. Louis gets when winter has technically left, but still keeps one hand on the door. My mother had been texting all week about Sunday dinner, sending too many exclamation marks, reminding everybody to come hungry, reminding my sister Tasha to bring the rolls from that bakery in Florissant, reminding me not to forget the lemon chess pie I said I would pick up. 2 months before my wedding, my family was trying to act normal on purpose. I did not understand then that forced normal is often a warning sound. I was 34, old enough to know when a room felt strained, but proud enough to think I could manage one anyway. I worked for the city as a building inspector, which meant I spent my weekdays walking through half-finished rehabs and condemned brick flats, looking for stress cracks other people missed. It still embarrasses me that I could spot water damage behind fresh paint in 10 seconds and somehow miss what was happening inside my own life for months. Camille, my fiancée, used to tease me about that. You inspect everybody else's ceilings, she would say, but never your own roof. At the time, I laughed. If you already feel something is off in this story, pay attention to that instinct, because it usually sees the truth before the mind is ready to accept it. Like, share and subscribe for more relationship and betrayal stories where one small moment changes everything. Camille and I had been together almost 3 years. She was 31, precise in ways that first felt calming to me. She folded sweaters like they were store displays. She labeled spice jars. She lined up shoes at the door, so neatly they looked like they had been assigned positions. She worked at a dental office in Clayton and made soy candles on weekends, pouring them in amber jars and naming them things like First Rain and Cedar Sunday. People loved her because she remembered birthdays and sent thank you cards. I loved her because she made steadiness look beautiful. Or maybe I loved the picture of steadiness. My sister Tasha was 2 years older than me and softer on the outside than she really was. She taught 5th grade in Jennings, wore press-on nails every summer, but chopped them short once school started, and hummed church songs when she was irritated. Her husband, Darnell, had charmed the way some men have broad shoulders. He used it without effort. He ran a private basketball training business and had a way of making every conversation bend toward him. He remembered names, laughed fast, and leaned in when women spoke to him, which people called confidence when they liked him and something else when they did not. Looking back, the first crack did not happen at that dinner. It happened 6 weeks earlier at my mother's church fish fry in Pine Lawn. I came back from a drink table carrying 2 sweating cups of fruit punch and saw Camille and Darnell standing too close near the dessert line, speaking in those low, private voices people use when they want to feel separate from a crowd. Nothing dramatic, no touching, just a pause when they noticed me, then an energy shift like a door shutting. I asked what was so funny. Camille said, "Nothing, just a joke about your serious face." I chose to believe her because belief was easier. That was my first decision point, and I made the comfortable choice. I could have asked Darnell directly why every joke with him felt like a secret. I could have told Tasha what I noticed. Instead, I told myself I was being possessive, and I hated that possibility enough to overcorrect. I grew up around men who confused suspicion with strength, and I had promised myself I would not become one of them, so I swallowed it. I even apologized to Camille later for seeming tense, which now feels like watching myself hand my own instincts over politely and ask somebody else to hold them. The second crack came in quieter. Camille started guarding her phone in a way that looked reasonable until I added up the repetitions. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter while she showered. Then it started going face down. Then it started traveling with her to the laundry room, to the mailbox, to the bathroom in the middle of the night. When I mentioned it once, lightly, she smiled too quickly and said everybody deserved privacy. That word landed hard because privacy and secrecy are cousins people mix up all the time. I let that go too. Another decision. Another quiet surrender. By the time Sunday dinner came, the wedding was close enough to feel expensive. The venue was booked in Forest Park. The florist wanted final counts by the end of the month. We had an engagement photo canvas my mother kept leaning against her hallway wall because she said she had not decided where to hang it. I had spent Saturday morning at a barbershop off Natural Bridge getting cleaned up, listening to old men argue about the Cardinals and city taxes while the owner burned toast in the back room. Everything in my life looked ordinary enough to survive one more family meal. I mistook routine for safety. My parents lived in a red brick ranch house on a quiet street where everybody still watched through lace curtains and knew when a new trash bin appeared. Their front porch light was already on when Camille and I pulled up. Gospel music drifted faintly through the screen door. Inside, it smelled like pot roast, onions, sweet yams, and furniture polish. My mother believed every gathering required enough food to suggest either celebration or emergency. My father was in his usual place near the den. Adjusting the thermostat like house temperature was a moral issue. Cousins, an aunt, and one of my mother's church friends filled the living room with soft chaos. Tasha was in the kitchen basting something, her reading glasses pushed on top of her head, her apron dusted with flour. Darnell stood near the sink, opening a bottle of sparkling cider with too much flair, making my aunt laugh. He wore a navy sweater and that expensive cologne he liked, something woody that always entered a room before he did. Camille slid into the house beside me and kissed my mother's cheek. For 1 second, with coats piled on the hall bench and everybody talking over each other, it almost convinced me. Families are experts at producing that 1 second. We all moved toward the table in stages. My mother's dining room was never big enough for the number of chairs she forced around it. So every holiday and every birthday became a lesson in elbows. The good dishes came out, the cream-colored ones with the gold trim. Nobody was supposed to microwave. The overhead light had a low hum to it, and rain tapped at the windows behind the curtains. I ended up on one side of the table with Camille to my right. Across from us sat Tasha and Darnell. My father carved meat with the seriousness of a surgeon. My mother kept saying, "Pass that bowl, baby." The first 15 minutes were harmless enough on the surface. My aunt asked about wedding invitations. My father complained about a stop sign near his job. Tasha told a story about one of her students spelling responsibility with only 4 letters and full confidence. Everybody laughed. Darnell laughed loudest. But each time somebody else spoke, I kept feeling his attention cut sideways toward Camille. Not a glance. Not even lust. Exactly. It was familiar. The look of somebody listening to 2 conversations at once, one public and one private. Camille stayed focused on her plate, yet her body seemed tuned to him like a radio catching a frequency I could not hear. I told myself to stop scanning. I cut my roast. I asked my cousin about her nursing classes. I reached for the green beans. Then Darnell made a joke about wedding speeches and said, "Malik better not cry up there." Camille smiled before I did, and not because it was funny, because she knew the rhythm of him. That was what unsettled me. He did not sound like an in-law speaking to a future sister-in-law. He sounded like a man testing a chord to see if it was still live. I looked at Tasha. She was buttering a roll, distracted, maybe tired, maybe surviving on trust. I wish betrayal always arrived with thunder. Sometimes it arrives with table manners. My fork slipped because my fingers suddenly felt clumsy, slick with gravy and nerves. It hit the plate, bounced once, then slid off the edge and disappeared beneath the table with a bright, stupid clatter. Conversation stumbled. I said, "My bad," already bending down. I expected shoes, chair legs, and drop napkins. Instead, I saw Darnell's right leg angled deep between Camille's knees. Not brushing, not accidental. He had positioned himself there like he belonged. Camille's feet were set apart to make room. Neither one jerked away. I stayed bent for 1 extra second because my mind needed proof, and proof was right there under a table covered in my mother's white linen cloth. Darnell's polished shoe was planted steady. Camille's calf was pressed against his pant leg. Their stillness was the worst part. People flinch for mistakes. They protect what should not be seen. These two did not move because the secret was not new to them. I picked up the fork even though I no longer care about a fork, rose slowly, and felt the room sharpen around me. My chair scraped back hard enough to silence half the table. Darnell finally withdrew his leg then, but not with panic. With annoyance, like I had interrupted something he was entitled to. Camille's face drained, then rearranged itself so fast it made me cold. She opened her mouth, saw my expression, and closed it. Tasha looked between us, not understanding yet. My mother said my name in that warning tone mothers use when they think you might embarrass them. Darnell held my eyes and said, calm as the weather, "Malik, step outside with me." He said it like a manager requesting a quick word. That composure settled something in me more than shouting would have. That was my second real decision point, the one that changed the shape of everything after it. I could have exposed it right there, without another word. I could have thrown my chair, cursed him out, giving the whole room the kind of scene nobody ever forgets. Instead, I nodded and walked toward the back door, because I wanted one thing before I spoke, publicly. Confirmation, not for my own certainty. For Tasha's. I knew if I accused her husband in front of everybody based only on what I saw on the table, some part of her would always look for an innocent explanation. I wanted to remove that escape hatch. The rain had slowed to a mist by the time we stepped onto my parents' covered patio. There was an old metal glider out there my mother refused to replace, and 2 dead fern hooks, still hanging from last summer. Streetlight from the alley painted everything amber. Darnell shut the door behind him and rested one hand on the rail. He did not look guilty. He looked inconvenienced. "You need to calm down," he said first, which is how selfish men announce a plan to lie in peace. I said, "Tell me I did not see what I saw." He stared at me, then smiled without warmth. "You saw enough," he said. "Now don't make it bigger than it already is." I remember the sound of a distant siren and water dripping from the gutter. I remember how still my hands felt. "How long?" I asked. He shrugged once. "Since around New Year's." For words. My whole chest went hollow. He kept talking because men like him confuse confession with control. He said Camille had been unhappy. He said I was too rigid, too busy, too proud. He said nobody meant to hurt anybody. Then he made his final mistake. He said, "Honestly, you were probably the last one to notice." I did not hit him. I think that surprises people when they hear this story. But rage would have made him important, and I no longer wanted to hand him that. I opened the door and walked back inside with the kind of quiet that makes rooms tense before a word is spoken. Everybody was watching. Camille stood halfway up from her chair. Tasha had gone pale without knowing why. I stayed at the end of the table and said evenly, "The wedding is off." My mother blinked like she had misheard me. I went on. "And Tasha, your husband just confirmed he's been involved with Camille for months." The room did not explode all at once. It cracked. My aunt sucked in breath. A serving spoon slipped from somebody's hand and hit a dish. Tasha stared at Darnell, not me. "Say something," she told him, and her voice had already changed. Camille came around her chair, so fast it almost tipped. "Malik, wait," she said. That single word, wait, made me angry in a fresh way, not because of what it meant, but because of the assumption in it, that there was still a negotiation to be had. My father stood up slowly from the head of the table, and silence gathered around him. Darnell tried the lazy route first. He said it was not what it looked like. Tasha said, "Did you touch her under this table in front of me?" He did not answer fast enough. That delay was its own language. Camille reached for my forearm, and I moved back before she touched me. My mother sat down hard like her knees had failed her. My father pointed to the front door and said to Darnell, "Leave my house." No yelling, just steel. Tasha looked at me then, and I could see the exact second belief and grief hit at once. Her face did not crumple. It emptied. I left before the room could fold me into its needs. That sounds cruel, but I knew how my family worked. If I stayed, I would be recruited into comforting one person. explaining to another, answering questions I did not owe anybody, while the two people who caused the damage searched for language soft enough to save them. I refused that role. Outside, the rain smelled like wet pavement and budding trees. I sat in my car, locked the doors, and did the first practical thing I could think of. I emailed the wedding planner. Subject line: cancel all services immediately. Then I called the venue. That drive afterward is a blur of stoplights and phone vibrations. I remember passing a boarded storefront, then a gas station glowing white against the dark, then the neon sign of a 24-hour diner near the highway where truckers always parked. I pulled in there because it was open and because fluorescent light can feel merciful when your life suddenly has no shape. Inside, a woman in pink scrubs ate fries alone at the counter, and a cook in the back shouted for somebody to pick up hash browns. I took a booth by the window, ordered coffee I barely touched, and finally listened to my phone. Tasha was the first voicemail. She did not cry on it. She just said, "Call me when you can." My mother left 2 messages, one shaky and one angry in a direction she had not picked yet. Camille sent a stream of texts that kept changing tone. "Please answer. I can explain. It was not supposed to happen like this. You humiliated me. We both made mistakes." Darnell texted once. "We need to talk man to man." I deleted his message without opening the thread again. That was another decision. I knew engaging him would feed the part of him that still thought this was a debate. When I finally called Tasha, it was after 10. I could hear the bathroom fan in the background and knew she had gone somewhere small to keep her voice from carrying. "Did he admit it?" she asked. No greeting. I told her exactly what he said outside, word for word where I could remember it. She went silent long enough that I thought the line had dropped. Then she said, "I asked him in the kitchen after you left." He kept talking around it. Her voice turned flat. "That means yes." I told her to stay with our parents that night. She said, "I already packed a bag." I got home after midnight to a house that looked familiar and wrong, like a stage model after somebody swapped the labels. Camille was not there. The framed sample invitation still sat on the entry table. Her candle supplies were lined along the kitchen shelves, wax flakes in clear bins, fragrance oils grouped by season. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at a jar labeled Black Fig, thinking about how somebody can leave traces of care all over a place they betrayed. Then I opened my laptop and kept dismantling the wedding. Caterer, photographer, rental company, hotel block. I did not rage. I administrated. Morning brought the second wave, which was less dramatic and somehow worse. I had slept maybe 3 hours on top of the comforter in my clothes. My father called before 8. "Your sister's staying here," he said. "Darnell came by. He is not coming to this house again." In the background, I heard my mother opening and closing cabinets harder than usual, the way she did when words were too small. Then Camille called. I let it ring twice, answered on the third, and said nothing. She started crying immediately. "I need to come get my things," she said. "No, I'm sorry. Now I ruined us. Logistics. You can come this evening." I told her, "When I'm home, not before." She shifted into the careful voice she used at work, the one designed to sound reasonable while controlling the frame. She said she had felt lonely. She said Darnell understood her. She said one thing led to another. I asked for 4 months. Silence. Then she said, "It was not every day." I almost laughed because cheaters love measurements when morality fails them. I told her to bring every key. I told her this was not a conversation about repairing us. Then I hung up because I could hear myself moving toward contempt, and I wanted clarity instead. She came just before sunset, wearing a long beige coat and gold hoops, looking beautiful in a way that made me briefly hate my own memory. She carried 2 duffel bags and stood on the porch like a visitor. I did not invite her in at first. She asked, "Can we please be adults?" I said, "Adults would have broken up before this." That landed. Inside, she moved the room, selecting herself piece by piece. Toiletry bag, sweaters, makeup case, candle molds. At one point, she stopped in the hallway by our engagement photos and covered her mouth. I kept standing there because if I sat, I feared I might soften. She tried one last angle while zipping the second bag. "You were already drifting from me," she said quietly. "I kept trying to reach you." That sentence hurt because it was not fully false. I had been working late. I was tired. I had assumed commitment could coast on intention for a few months while life was busy, but being imperfect is not the same as inviting betrayal. I told her, "You had 1,000 honest exits before you chose this one." She cried harder then, not delicately. The kind of cry meant to flood the room until accountability cannot breathe. I opened the front door and waited. What happened with Darnell took longer because his arrogance delayed the part where consequences become visible. He called me from 3 different numbers over 2 days. When I finally answered one, he said I had blown up 2 households over grown folks' business. He said I should have let him handle Tasha privately. I asked if privately meant keeping his leg between my fiancé's knees during Sunday dinner while my mother passed yams. He cursed and switched tactics. He reminded me I had once connected him to a contractor who sent clients his way. "You know people," he said, "do not mess with my money." That threat told me exactly who he was grieving. I did not call around trying to destroy him, and that matters to me. The consequences were already moving. Darnell's training business depended on trust from parents, schools, and church leagues. The truth spread through family first, then sideways through the ordinary social channels Black communities know too well. Barber chairs, school pickup lines, ushers whispering after service, women standing beside minivans after choir rehearsal. Nobody needed embellishment. He had risked everything for secrecy and then chosen entitlement when caught. Parents started pulling boys from his Saturday sessions. A church deacon whose grandson trained with him asked Tasha one careful question. By the end of the week, cancellations were piling up. Tasha, meanwhile, surprised me. I expected collapse because she had built 10 years around that man. Instead, she became exact. She took 2 personal days from school, met with a lawyer in a small office near downtown, and made lists on yellow legal pads in my parents' breakfast nook. Joint accounts, car title, mortgage, insurance. I sat with her one afternoon while rain clicked against the windows, and she said, "I keep wanting one clean reason, but maybe there is no clean reason. Maybe you just like getting away with things." That sentence changed how I understood her marriage. It also changed how she understood herself. About 10 days after the dinner, Darnell showed up at my house unannounced. It was early evening, warm enough for kids to be riding bikes in the street, and I had just gotten home with a paper sack from the corner carryout. Through the blinds, I saw his silver SUV at the curb and felt my shoulders harden. Part of me wanted to pretend I was not home. Another part was tired of ceding ground. I opened the door, but stayed inside the frame. He looked rumpled now, less polished, beard uneven, eyes ringed dark. "You turned everybody against me," he said before I spoke a word. "No," I said, "you introduced everybody to yourself." He laughed once, ugly and short. He asked whether ruining my own engagement had been worth it. He asked whether I felt big now. I told him this had never been about feeling big. It was about refusing to carry his lie another day. He stepped closer, close enough for me to smell stale coffee and sweat. "You think you won," he said. "Ain't nobody winning." He shoved my shoulder. It was not a dramatic attack, just enough force to test whether I would back up. I did not. I pushed him off the threshold and told him to leave. Neighbors looked up immediately because nothing travels faster than raised voices. On a quiet block, Darnell stood there breathing hard, chest lifting under a wrinkled sweatshirt, all his old charm gone. For a second I thought he might swing. Instead, he saw 2 porch lights come on and heard somebody say, "You all right over there?" And the remembered audience changes everything. He muttered something I did not catch and walked back to his SUV. I called the police not because I thought they would solve my life, but because patterns matter when men start appearing at your home angry. That report became part of the wall he could no longer charm through. Summer came slowly after that. Tasha moved into a short-term rental in University City and bought bright dish towels like she was rebuilding from the edges inward. My mother stopped setting 4 places at Sunday dinner. My father started checking on me with offers that sounded practical and meant affection. I'm at the hardware store. Need anything? Camille sent one final message in late June, a real apology this time, stripped of performance. I read it and did not answer. Some apologies arrived after the bridge is gone. By August, Darnell had moved to Kansas City to stay with a cousin and start over where fewer people knew his name. Tasha filed. I kept living. If this story hits you, because you know what it feels like to rebuild after betrayal, stay with this channel. Like, share, and subscribe for more first-person drama stories about cheating, family secrets, and the moment karma finally catches up. What stays with me now is not the shock of what I saw under that table. It is everything that followed the moment I refused to pretend I had not seen it. Tasha rebuilding her life one legal pad at a time. My father pointed Darnell toward the door without raising his voice. Even me, standing in my kitchen while Camille packed up jars of candle wax and understanding that grief gets cleaner once denial leaves a room. Boundaries are not dramatic most of the time. They are quiet, expensive, and necessary. But when you honor them early, you stop other people from writing your role in their mess. The end.